On the oak long table of the University of Munich, Saoirse Zuckerberg's fountain pen snagged a tear in the financial statements. She looked up at the podium, where a man in a pale purple shirt was presenting a set of data charts. The traditional men's clothing market is shrinking, while searches for gender-neutral apparel have grown by 437% over the past 3 years. Liam Schumacher's voice was like melted dark chocolate. As he unfastened his cufflinks, several women in the front row exchanged glances. Saoirse's nails scraped unconsciously against her leather notebook. This Oxford PhD had hidden a trap in his proposal. He deliberately tucked the funding requirements into the last line of fine print. "You're overlooking the conservatism of the Asian market." She suddenly raised her hand, her crimson hair blazing like fire under the spotlights. In China, 68% of men believe wearing dresses would harm their career advancement. Liam's eyelashes flickered behind his lenses. He walked toward her seat, and Saoirse caught the scent of cedar and mint in his aftershave. "That's 2019 data," he said, bending over, his shirt collar gapping to reveal his collarbone. "We just received new research from Shanghai last week. That number has dropped to 41%. A murmur of laughter rippled through the room. Saoirse felt her ears burn, and she noticed a tiny mole on his right earlobe. During the coffee break, Liam blocked her path. "Ms. Zuckerberg, your father's moves in energy futures are the real gamble," he said, handing her a coffee cup stained with a pink lipstick print, clearly used by someone else. Saoirse poured the coffee into a potted plant. "Mr. Schumacher, is even your shirt borrowed?" She poked the pilled cuff of his sleeve. "It's a fake Armani. The stitching is off by 0.3 millimeters. Liam suddenly grabbed her wrist. His palm had a thin layer of calluses, worn from years of gripping a steering wheel. "I need a date who understands finance for Berlin Design Week next week," he said, his thumb brushing the face of her watch. "A Patek Philippe 50-175. Seems you prefer risks you can hold." The chandelier in the ballroom cast sparkles like shattered diamonds across Saoirse's eyes. She noticed Liam glancing at her legs. Not the leering look most men gave, but an assessment of her tights' denier. "You miscalculated the ROI on page 13 of your proposal," she said suddenly. Liam was peeling shrimp for her, and the shells formed half a heart on the porcelain plate. He froze mid-fork. "So, you did read every page?" The shrimp was drowned in lemon juice, sour enough to make Saoirse squint. The taste brought back the night she'd first drunk champagne at 15. In a taxi back to the hotel, Liam's knee brushed against hers, deliberate yet casual. Saoirse counted the streetlights flashing by. On the 7th one, he spoke suddenly. "Do you know why top billionaires collect contemporary art? Money laundering?" She said, crisp and quantifiable. "Quantified risk." His breath warmed her ear. "Like your heartbeat right now." Saoirse shoved him away abruptly. In the rearview mirror, the driver was straining to listen. "Stop the car," she said, slamming 2 banknotes on the seat. Liam followed her into the rain, and his fake leather shoes soaked through instantly. "Your company's 3rd largest shareholder is the Munich Pension Fund," she said, her high heels splashing in puddles. "If I tell them tomorrow that you're using client data to train AI models..." Liam burst out laughing, rain streaming down his Adam's apple and into his shirt. "So, is this a date or a merger negotiation?" He pulled off his tie and wrapped it around her wrist. The silk still carried his body heat. Saoirse suddenly realized it was the first time that year she hadn't checked crude oil futures at 9 p.m. Raindrops clung to Liam's eyelashes, glinting like shards of glassine candy wrappers under the neon lights. 300 meters away, an assistant to Marcus Zuckerberg snapped a photo of them kissing. The image circulated for 3 days on the Zuckerberg family's encrypted internal servers before landing on Saoirse's private terminal. She stared at Liam's profile in the rain on the screen, her thumb brushing unconsciously against the edge of the tablet. 50 million euros. Marcus's voice came from the shadows of his study. Enough to buy his shabby company 20 times over. A half-smoked Havana cigar lay in the ashtray. Saoirse flipped the tablet face down on her lap. "I want the algorithm patents, not a clothing company." She heard the faint scrape of her nails against leather exactly the same sound as that day in the forum. When the butler entered with a pillbox, Liam was trying on a new shirt in his apartment. The mirror reflected Vivian's young face. Still too tight around the collar? The girl's fingers brushed his Adam's apple. "Don't move," Liam said, grabbing her wrist, suddenly recalling the same gesture on that rainy night. He let go, turned, and pulled a folder from his drawer. "Give this to the finance department tomorrow." Vivian gasped when she flipped to the last page. A prenuptial agreement? The paper, backlit by sunlight, revealed the shadow of dense fine print. Liam's hands were steady as he fastened his cufflinks. "Read Clause 3 on page 7 before you sign," he said, his lips curving into a Saoirse-like smirk, the result of 3 months of unconscious mimicry. The air conditioning in the Munich notary's office was far too cold. Saoirse wrapped her cashmere shawl tighter as the notary read the agreement aloud. When the phrase pre-implantation genetic diagnosis, PGD, was spoken, she noticed Liam's eyelashes flicker. "Gender selection is illegal in Germany," he said, his fountain pen hovering over the signature line. Saoirse smelled an unfamiliar citrus cologne on him, not the cedarwood set she'd given him. She reached out and pressed her hand on the document. "The Tokyo lab will have results tomorrow," she said. The paper under her nails felt faintly warm, like her wrist had that day he'd bound it with his tie. Liam suddenly laughed. "Does her father know his trust fund is missing a zero?" The pen's nib pierced the paper, and ink bloomed into a tiny black hole. The notary pretended not to see. The notification chime for a successful transfer sounded sharply in the night. Saoirse counted the diamond necklaces in her safe, a habit she'd inherited from her mother. The clasp on the third necklace was loose, just like the third button on Liam's shirt that he'd left unfastened when he left that day. Her phone screen lit up. The photo Liam sent showed a champagne bottle with a share transfer agreement stuffed in its neck. She zoomed in on the background. The reflection in the glass revealed half a pale purple skirt hem. "The surrogacy agency is booked for Wednesday," Saoirse typed, hitting send just as she heard laughter from her father's study downstairs. Marcus had been meeting with lawyers late every night recently, and she recognized the alligator skin folder that held notarized documents. Liam replied instantly, "Don't forget to prepare the premium for a male embryo." He added a heart emoji, the same shade as the lipstick stain on that coffee cup from the forum. Saoirse walked to the window and saw an unfamiliar Porsche parked in the courtyard. Its headlights flashed suddenly, illuminating Vivian's figure fleeing in the rain, a checkbook emblazoned with the Zuckerberg family crest clutched in her hand. At the bottom of the safe, the signature line on the embryo cryopreservation agreement had a suspicious water stain. Saoirse held a lighter to it, and the smudged final letter of Liam, blurred by tears, appeared. In the flickering flame, she remembered Clause 19 of the addendum the notary had read. If the first embryo fails to meet the gender requirement, the second party shall cooperate unconditionally with a second procedure. Saoirse's fingertip left a crescent-shaped indent on the embryo test report. She stared at the bolded words, "female embryo," her nails slowly tracing the edge of the paper. "I told you I wanted a boy." Her voice was as cold as a scalpel. The air conditioning vent in the clinic blew directly on Liam's neck, and he saw the taut jawline beneath his wife's crimson hair. The Japanese doctor adjusted his glasses. "This is a specially approved case by the ethics committee. We can't perform another selection." Beyond the glass door, the surrogate mother flipped through a magazine, her abdomen rounded in a soft curve. Liam felt his phone in his pocket. He pretended to straighten his tie, secretly adjusting the camera angle. "Maybe we should first rip." The sound of paper tearing cut him off. Saoirse had torn the report in half, and the pieces fluttered like snow onto the exam table. The rustle of her checkbook made the doctor sit up straight instantly. "Triple the fee," she said, the pen's nib piercing the edge of the check. "Prepare for a second egg retrieval now." The ink spread like a tiny pool of blood. Liam noticed she'd signed it from Marcus's joint account. The doctor glanced hesitantly at Liam. Repeat ovarian stimulation could be harmful to the donor's ovaries. "She froze 20 eggs last year." Saoirse cut him off, suddenly turning to her husband. Or would you rather provide a sperm sample yourself? Her gaze flicked to the phone charm peeking out of Liam's pocket. Liam's Adam's apple bobbed. He'd only received that charm, engraved with Vivian's initials, that morning. He reached out and grabbed Saoirse's wrist. Let's talk in the waiting room. The vending machine in the waiting room hummed softly. Liam bought a can of black coffee. When he popped the tab, foam splattered onto his custom cufflinks. Your father met with Lucas last night, he said casually, dabbing at the cufflinks with a tissue. Saoirse's pupils contracted slightly, a reflex she always had when hearing the lawyer's name. So that's your leverage? She scoffed. Threatening me with my family's dog? Her fingers brushed unconsciously against the engraving inside her wedding band. The L&S Liam had secretly added on their wedding day. The vending machine suddenly dispensed 2 cans of cola. Vivian stood at the corner, arms full of folders, her skirt still pale purple. Liam's coffee can crumpled in his hand, the aluminum cut into his palm. The finance department needs your signature, the girl said, her voice barely a whisper. A label reading embryo cryopreservation peeked out of the folder. Saoirse snatched it away, and the edge of the paper sliced Vivian's finger. As a bead of blood welled up, Liam instinctively reached for the handkerchief in his pocket. But Saoirse was faster. She pulled off her tie and pressed it to the wound, the silk instantly staining dark red. Tell the finance department, she said, leaning close to Vivian's ear. If they mix up documents again, they'll be transferred to the pension fund. Her breath made the girl's ears burn. Liam caught a whiff of the familiar cedarwood perfume. He deliberately skipped wearing it that morning. A nurse came to announce the procedure was ready. Saoirse slipped her diamond ring into a velvet box. The clink of metal reminded Liam of the notary's pen. He pulled out his phone and sent a message, the lock screen with a photo of that coffee cup from the forum. When the consent form was placed in front of him, Liam suddenly pressed his hand on it. What if this one's a girl too? Then we keep trying until we get it right, Saoirse said, shoving the pen into his hand. The barrel still had traces of Vivian's blood, sticky and warm in his palm. The doctor gestured for them to change into gowns. In the dressing room, Liam used the pretense of adjusting his mask to snap a photo of the surgical risk disclosure form. When the flash went off, he saw Saoirse's smirk in the mirror. Sending that to your father or the press, she said, yanking off her surgical cap. Her crimson hair cascaded down like flames. Don't forget Clause 17 from the notary's office. She snapped her rubber gloves tight. The surgical lights were blinding. Liam counted the holes in the ceiling, listening to the clink of medical instruments. Saoirse's eyelashes were almost translucent in the bright light, reminding him of that rain-soaked night. As the anesthesiologist prepared the injection, Saoirse suddenly grabbed Liam's hand. If this one's a boy, her nails dug into his palm, as if seeking confirmation. You'll file for divorce immediately, Liam said calmly. The monitor beeped steadily, like a countdown. Just as the doctor lifted the egg retrieval needle, Liam's phone vibrated in the locker. The lock screen showed 2 unread messages, one from Vivian and one from an unknown number labeled notary backup. Before the anesthesia fully took effect, the last thing Saoirse saw was the progress bar on her husband's phone, uploading to the cloud, stuck at 99%. She tried to reach for it, but only touched the cold metal rail of the operating table, just as cold as the Porsche door in the rain that night. The operating room's automatic door slid shut slowly. Liam stood in the hallway, staring at the 99% progress bar on his phone screen. His finger hovered over the cancel button for a second. Mr. Schumacher? A nurse handed him a stack of post-op instructions. Your wife needs 2 hours of observation. Liam stuffed his phone into his pocket. The edge of the papers brushed against Vivian's dry blood. He sniffed. There was a metallic tang mixed with Saoirse's perfume, an omen of something ominous. Marcus's call came out of nowhere. The wedding invitations are printed, he said, the sound of a cigar cutter clicking in the background. Guess who I found on the guest list? All the partners at Lucas's law firm. Liam held the phone between his shoulder and ear, scanning the surgical bill. The last line read, embryo gender testing surcharge, the number precise to 2 decimal places. I thought that was a surprise for Saoirse, he said. deliberately rustling the papers. Like how you had the loan agreement notarized as a recoverable debt. Silence hung on the line for 3 seconds. A smart man would worry about the repayment deadline. Marcus chuckled. 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Bring that little accountant in the purple dress to see me. When the nurse wheeled Saoirse out, Liam was deleting the cloud file. Her pale lips moved slightly. The backup. It's already taken care of, he said, taking her cold hand. The wedding band dug into his callous palm. The ECG monitor beeped twice faster. At the end of the hallway, Vivian peeked around the corner, arms full of folders. Liam noticed the coffee stain on her skirt, the same spot where Saoirse had spilled her coffee that day at the forum. New interns start tomorrow, Saoirse said suddenly, her voice rough as sandpaper. You'll train them personally. Her nails scraped a fine line into the edge of the stretcher, exactly the same force she'd used to tear the financial statements. Liam felt the USB drive in his pocket. The lawyer had given it to him that morning. It contained evidence of Marcus transferring assets. He bent down and kissed Saoirse's forehead, tasting the bitterness of anesthesia. Wedding cake tasting is scheduled for Thursday, he whispered. Your father insisted on Black Forest. Saoirse's eyelids flickered. She knew it was a code. When her father was about to punish someone, the dessert after dinner was always Black Forest cake. The monitor's beeping suddenly accelerated. The nurse hurried to adjust the 4-drip rate. Liam took the opportunity to pull his hand free. His ring finger was white from the pressure. He remembered how Saoirse had gripped her pen that day at the notary's office. Vivian approached timidly. Mr. Schumacher, these need your... Leave them in my assistant's office. Liam cut her off, glancing at the Zuckerberg Energy logo on the folder. He suddenly grabbed the girl's wrist. A faint purple bruise showed under her cuff. Saoirse mumbled something delirious under the medication. When Liam leaned in to listen, his pupils contracted sharply. She was reciting numbers in German, exactly the amount of Marcus's loan. Tell her the embryos are frozen, the doctor said, approaching. A drop of water from his mask fell onto the medical record. Though legally, we can't disclose the gender, Liam's phone vibrated. The lock screen showed an encrypted email from Lucas with an attachment, a scan of page 7 of the prenuptial agreement. He noticed a fingerprint he hadn't seen before, shaped like a tiny heart. The nurse wheeled Saoirse into a VIP room. Liam stood rooted to the spot, staring at his distorted reflection in the elevator doors. Vivian's blood still stained his tie, like a dark red snake. The interns need to sign non-disclosure agreements. Saoirse's voice drifted out of the room, clear for someone who'd just had surgery, especially those in finance. Liam turned and knocked over a medical cart. Amid the clatter, he heard a familiar vibration from under the metal tray. It was Saoirse's second phone, the screen lighting up with Marcus's caller ID. Vivian bent down to pick up the scattered papers. Liam noticed a red mark on the back of her neck, shaped like the crown of a Patek Philippe watch. He suddenly remembered the scratch on Saoirse's wristwatch. It hadn't been there the day of the forum. The wedding venue's been changed, Saoirse said from inside the room, her voice cutting through the door. Father likes places with a view of the Alps. Liam felt the USB drive in his inner pocket. The metal case was icy cold, like the rails of the operating table. It started raining outside. Raindrops hit the window, blurring into the shape of LNS. The phone at the nurse's station rang suddenly. The on-duty doctor picked it up, his expression growing strange. Mr. Schumacher, he said, glancing hesitantly at Liam. The lab says there was a mix-up with one of the specimens. The door to Saoirse's room creaked open a crack. Liam saw her holding a phone. The screen's glow made her face look like a skull. The call interface showed Lucas flashing. Vivian screamed suddenly. The papers in her hand scattered, and on top was a wedding photo of Liam and Saoirse. At the edge of the photo, a blurry figure in a pale, purple dress stood in the shadows. Vivian's nails scraped a gash into the image as she screamed, the sound echoing down the hallway. Liam bent down to pick it up and noticed 4 words written in pencil on the back. Surveillance blind spot. Who gave you this? He said, gripping Vivian's trembling wrist. The girl's pupils shrank to pinpricks under the hallway lights, her lipstick smudged. The door to Saoirse's room swung open. "Did my intern get scared?" she said, leaning against the frame, the wires of the heart monitor peeking out from under her gown. "Looks like the finance department's confidentiality training was a waste." Liam felt the USB drive grow hot in his pocket. He let go of Vivian and pretended to straighten his tie, brushing his hand against the voice recorder in his inner pocket. It was still running. "The board meeting was moved up," Saoirse said, holding out a tablet. The screen displayed an email from Marcus. "Father wants to review the new quarter's cash flow." Her nails left oil stains on the screen, the same shade as the lipstick on that coffee cup from the forum. Vivian suddenly doubled over, retching. Liam saw the red mark on her neck had turned purple, shaped like the crown of a Patek Philippe. He remembered the scratch on Saoirse's watch that morning. It hadn't been there before. "Go buy Mr. Schumacher a coffee," Saoirse said, pulling several banknotes from her gown pocket. "And use a heat-proof sleeve this time." The bills fluttered to the floor at Vivian's feet. One had a number written in lipstick, the last digits of Marcus's loan amount. The elevator dinged. Lucas stepped out, a briefcase in hand, his leather shoes clicking like a drumbeat on the tile. "Perfect timing for the board meeting," he said, showing Liam his tablet, a scan of page 7 of the prenuptial agreement. Saoirse suddenly grabbed Liam's tie. "Did you tell him about the embryos?" The silk dug into the hair at the back of his neck, the same texture as the restraints on the operating table. Lucas chuckled. "Mr. Marcus is more concerned about debt collateral," he said, opening his briefcase to reveal a checkbook emblazoned with a Zuckerberg crest, especially that set of algorithm patents. The heart monitor in the room let out a shrill beep. As nurses rushed in, Liam watched Saoirse hurl the tablet at the wall. The screen shattered like a spiderweb. For a split second, he thought he'd see the Tokyo Labs report on it. "The fire exit." Vivian suddenly tugged at his sleeve, her voice barely audible. "Now!" The coffee stain on her skirt had spread into a map-like shape, just like the one from the coffee Saoirse had spilled at the forum. Liam fell for the voice recorder switch. He followed Vivian into the stairwell, his ears ringing with the sound of the second set of footsteps. It could have been Lucas or one of Marcus's bodyguards. "They swapped the embryos," Vivian said, shoving a folder into his hands. "The lab's original records." The water stains on the pages blurred the text, but the words XY chromosomes were still clear. Liam's thumb brushed the date on the document. It was the same day Saoirse had forced him to sign the second procedure consent form. He suddenly remembered how cold the notary's office had been, and how Saoirse's cashmere shawl had slipped, revealing injection marks from ovarian stimulation. "Why are you helping me?" he said, gripping the edge of the folder. Vivian's bruise glowed purple under the green emergency lights, like one of the gemstone necklaces in Saoirse's safe. The girl's lips brushed his ear. "Because she showed me the cryopreservation agreement too," she said, her voice just loud enough for the recording device to pick up. "About the embryos and the loan." Her fingers traced a word on his back. In German, 50 million. Liam's temples throbbed. He thought of the German number Saoirse had mumbled before surgery, and the evidence of Marcus's asset transfers on the USB drive. The lights in the stairwell suddenly turned red, like the emergency alarm in the Tokyo lab. "The board meeting's starting," the assistant said, waving his phone. The screen showed a countdown from Marcus. 10 minutes left to decide on the debt restructuring plan. Vivian's teeth knocked against Liam's chin. He tasted blood, same metallic tang as the blood on Saoirse's tie. The papers scattered across the floor. On top was the Sigget's medical report, with the blood type circled in red. "AB negative," the assistant said, tapping the word with his shoe. "Same rare type as Mrs. Zuckerberg." His phone camera focused on Liam's suddenly pale face, its lens as precise as the operating room's shadowless lamp. Liam suddenly heard the elevator ding. He knew the rhythm of Saoirse's high heels. She always walked like that before bringing up divorce. The voice recorder burned in his pocket, like the female embryo Saoirse had torn up. His eardrums ached from the sound of her footsteps. Her crimson hair blazed like burning banknotes under the stairwell's emergency lights. She was clutching Vivian's employee ID, the plastic edge leaving a red mark in her palm. "A finance intern?" Saoirse sneered in German. "Or your new surrogate?" In the ID photo, a faint bruise from ovarian stimulation showed under Vivian's pale purple collar. Lucas suddenly appeared at the stairwell corner, his briefcase clamped under his arm. What a coincidence. Mr. Marcus just received the lab's fax, he said, opening the case to reveal the blood test report. The AB negative blood type was highlighted in neon pink. Vivian lunged for the report. That baby isn't. Saoirse's high heel came down on the paper first, the heel crunching the blood type data. Liam saw a new tattoo on the inside of her ankle. The German word for control, written in cursive. See you in court, Saoirse said, shaking off Vivian's grasping hand. Bring your little lover. As she turned, her gown slipped to reveal a barcode tattoo below her collarbone. The number of the frozen embryo. The fire door slammed shut, its echo mixing with the roar of a Rolls-Royce engine. Lucas pulled out his car keys. The reporters are all here, he said. Mr. Marcus has a surprise ready. A surrogacy agency logo dangled from his keychain. Liam grabbed Vivian's trembling hand. That blood test report. The girl still had coffee stains under her nails, same spot as the coffee Saoirse had spilled. He suddenly remembered how cold the notary's office had been, and the injection marks he'd seen when Saoirse's shawl slipped. The baby's blood type is O, Vivian sobbed, flipping to the bottom of the folder. They swapped the test tubes. Coffee stains blurred the embryo photo on the page, and the XY in the gender box was dissolving. Reporters swarmed the courthouse steps. Marcus's Rolls-Royce pulled up right in front of them. Liam counted the reflections on the car's surface. The 7th camera was focused on the edge of the USB drive, peeking out of his pocket. 50 million euros in debt, Lucas said, holding up the notarized agreement to the microphones. Or the algorithm patents. The alligator skin folder's clasp glinted coldly. Same style as the staples on Saoirse's surgical consent form. Saoirse suddenly burst out of the courthouse's side door. Something clutched to her chest. Reporters surged forward, their long lenses locked onto the baby blanket in her arms. Liam realized it wasn't the surrogate's baby boy at all. It was a doll attached to a foreline. I have custody, she said, yanking back the blanket to reveal a barcode on the doll's chest. A scanner beeped, and the courthouse's big screen suddenly cut to footage from the stairwell. Vivian shoving the folder into Liam's hands. Marcus rolled down the window. Live ratings just hit a record, he said, smoke curling from his cigar. The second hand on his watch froze at the exact time they'd signed the notary's agreement. The car speakers suddenly blared Liam's voice. 5 months is enough to drain the company. The recording cut off abruptly. Liam patted the voice recorder in his pocket, dead battery. He looked at Saoirse. She was counting under her breath, same way the anesthesiologist had counted down before surgery. Vivian ran toward the Rolls-Royce. The baby's blood type is wrong, she shouted, pounding on the window. Her palm left a bloodstain on the glass. Marcus flipped on the windshield wipers. The stains smudged pale pink, like diluted embryo preservation fluid. As bailiffs moved in to control the crowd, Liam realized Saoirse was gone. A torn doll lay in the courthouse flower bed, its stuffing tangled with scraps of the cryopreservation agreement. He knelt to piece them together and saw his signature next to a line of tiny text. LNS Reality TV Production Company. Lucas was straightening his tie on the steps when he froze. A corner of a check peeked out of his suit pocket. So many zeros, it was dizzying. Liam counted 7 zeros before hearing the reporter's gasp. The big screen had switched to footage of him and Vivian in the stairwell, but the audio was a private conversation between Saoirse and Lucas. Wire my share of the ratings profits to my Swiss account, Saoirse's voice purred, like champagne bubbles. Make sure to get close-ups of the baby boy. The timestamp in the corner showed it was filmed the day before the surrogacy procedure. Marcus hit the car horn hard. The Rolls-Royce's trunk popped open, revealing neatly stacked souvenirs printed with LNS. As reporters scrambled for them, Liam saw they were wedding invitations repurposed as stock certificates, with the ticker symbol of his bankrupt company. Vivian collapsed onto the steps, her skirt stained with coffee and blood. Liam reached out to help her, but felt something hard in her pocket. It was the lipstick print from that Forum coffee cup, now pressed onto a Zuckerberg Energy Share transfer agreement. The courthouse windows reflected distorted figures. Liam noticed his tie was askew by zero point 0.3 millimeters. He suddenly laughed and reached to fix it, brushing his hand against his inner pocket. The USB drive and voice recorder were gone. Only a note remained. Ratings profits deposited. Siren wails grew closer. Lucas inched backward, his shoes stepping on the doll's remains. A scrap of the barcode stuck to his sole. When a scanner beeped, the big screen switched to footage from the Tokyo lab. Freezers lined with test tubes labeled XY. Saoirse's crimson hair flashed across the screen. Her last appearance was in a surveillance blind spot at the nursery, holding a crying baby. The custody papers fluttered to the floor. The wax seal split in two, revealing the glint of a hidden camera inside.